this is what I think about whenever I see stuff like what's happening right now. This is what I think about. My uncle, I've told this story many times. I've told you this. I don't think you guys heard this, right? My uncle, to be clear, we actually met just a week ago, and we met, about a month or two ago. So Anna's the only person. I remember weren't clear about how Anna and I had our relationship, and so this isn't, it's amazing how quickly you can come up to speed, and when you're on the right frequency, when you're on the right wavelength, when you're with, around the right ideas, everything kind of falls into line. Zora Hurston, one of our favorite authors, she said, "Love makes your soul crawl out from its hiding place, like the hiding place it has in your mind." And it's not just love that does that, but the right ideas, the right energy, getting around the right people. It makes your soul crawl out from where it's been hiding. I love that idea that your soul is hiding, and only love, only passion, only things that the right ideas bring you out, and you can be who you're supposed to be. It's the same thing. My uncle there was this vending machine. He used to work at this hospital, and he had this vending machine that was just a total piece of shit. It never worked right, and you would go into it, you would put your money in, and it would just take your money, or it would just give you your money back, and it would give you what you wanted. So let's say you wanted like J3, you would hit J3, and it might give you J3, but it might give you like K4, or it might give you nothing and just take your money. It might give you three J3s. Like if it's a Snickers bar, you might get one, you might get two, you might get three, you might get a Doritos, or you might get nothing. And you would put your money in, and sometimes you get your money back, sometimes you get more than your money back. Like you never had any idea what the hell this thing was going to do. And I would wonder, why did he never fix this vending machine? I'm like, why don't you get it fixed? And everyone would complain about it. People hated it. And it was like this weird thing. But eventually, everyone just got used to it. Like it just became this thing where people would just get used to it. Like, well, I'm going to try and get something from the vending machine. Like, what are you going to get? Like, I have no idea. Like, do you want something? Yeah, I'll take it. Well, don't tell me what you want, because it doesn't matter. I'm just going to, if you want something, you're going to get something, maybe. Or maybe we'll get nothing. Like, it was just like this total crapshoot. Nobody had any idea what you were going to get. And one day, my uncle explained something to me that really is crazy. He was this. Well, almost all my uncles were crazy. This guy was like really pretty out there. But he said, as he was watching people use the vending machine, and people were like, "What the fuck? What's going on?" And people like, people get really like crazy with this. Like, this vending machine doesn't work, and people would complain, and it never made a difference. No one cared. Nothing would happen. It's the same vending machine. It's like you'd have to pay extra to get the vending machine to act up the way this one was acting up. But he said something to me I never forgot. He said, "Awesome. That vending machine is America." It's a perfect analogy, a perfect metaphor, a perfect lesson for what America is. And the more I've thought about this, the more I realize he was right. Because, he's explaining this to me. He says, some people come in, they do what they're supposed to do. They do exactly what they think they're supposed to do. They put money in, and then you put your money in and you hit J5 or J3 because you want a Three Musketeers or you want a Snickers. And sometimes you'll get exactly what you want. You do what you're supposed to do, and you get exactly what you want. But most of the time, that's not what's going to happen. You do what you think you're supposed to do, and you don't get what you want. You might get more than what you want in rare cases, but usually you're going to get something different. Usually it's something less than what you want, like nothing, right? So you think you're going to get 2 Three Musketeers, and you end up getting like 1 Jolly Rancher or something, right? And it's such a powerful, like I've realized the more I think about it, the more that's right, because, you show up, you do what you're supposed to. You might get a lot more than you're supposed to. You might get exactly what you want. That rarely happens. You're going to get something different, and usually a lot less than what you want. And so my uncle said, once you don't get what you want, he's like, it comes down to, what do you do? What are you going to do about it? And I remember thinking, what is he talking about? What is he saying? I was like, well, what should they do about it? And he was like, he's like, the what you want is right there. You can see it. What you want, like, I thought this is such a great, right? It's perfect, right? Like, that's exactly how America is, right? The cars you want, the houses you want, the life you want, the relationships you want, everything you want is right there. Unlike many other places, we don't even get to see it if you're not there. We get to see it every day, all around us, right? But most people aren't living the lives they want. They aren't living in the house they want. They're not driving the cars they want. They don't have the relationships they want. They don't have the body they want. They don't have any of the things that they want. But he's saying about this, like, let's say you want a Three Musketeers. It's right there. And he's like, it all comes down to, what are you going to do about it? You can get it. And I remember him saying, he's like, if you punch and kick and scream and cuss and spit at that thing enough, you'll get what you want at the vending machine. And I was like, that's why he always kept it up. And so I remember the day he was like, tell me, what do you want, Hassan? If you think of a candy bar. And I was like, I don't want anything, because I didn't want to mess with this thing. He's like, no, you're going to go get me a Three Musketeers. Go get me a Three Musketeers. I'm walking down the hall. I'm like, oh, God, who knows what's going to come out of this thing. I put my money in. I hit, it was like, J5 or K4 or whatever, K3. And of course, nothing happens. I don't get the Three Musketeers. And he just looks at me and he's like, now what are you going to do about it, pussy? And I was like, I'm sitting there like, oh God. So I just started banging this thing, hitting this thing, pushing it. And I just kept going more and more. The whole time he was just staring at me. So I just kept going more and more. I started picking up this thing, dropping it, punching it, kicking it, screaming at it, cussing at it, spitting at it, just going nuts, And, finally something would fall out. It'd be a Snickers. Another thing would fall out. It was a Doritos. And it's true. I mean, if you knock it over, pick it up, bang it around enough, eventually what fell out? The Three Musketeers. And at this point, like, we're like 10 feet away. Me and the vending machine are like 10 feet away from where we started out, right? We're like down the hall, and it's like, I get up, I'm like sweating, I'm out of breath, my clothes are disheveled, I'm bleeding. Like, if I was a girl, you would think I just got raped. As I walk over, and I give him the Three Musketeers, I never forgot what he said. He took it from me, and he looked at me and he said, God bless America. And I thought, that's exactly, right? That's exactly what America is. I think about that right now, because people do what they did what they thought they should do. They went to school, they got a job or whatever, and now they're not getting what they expected, right? They're not getting what they wanted. And it all comes down to, what are you going to do about it, right? What are you going to make happen? Are you going to accept that? Is that okay with you? Are you just going to wait for someone else to do something? Or you think that this program now, the $1,000 thing, if $1,000 from the government saves your life, you didn't have much of it, financially speaking, much of a life to begin with. That's not going to make a difference. I said this, what was it, like 10 days ago, and look at the hailstorm that's come down since I said that. Right now, I think it's a Wall Street Journal editorial. Remember this article you sent me, right? They're saying basically we have to pick between the Black Death, the Black Plague, or the Great Depression. These are the choices, right? Everyone's so dramatic. It's important to have some perspective, right? To understand what America is. I'm not, we were talking about the polling data earlier. I'm not saying, obviously this is like a racist thing to say, and I'm not going to, we don't want to, just let me finish, right? So I'm really fascinated by like the polling data and how people make their political and like religious decisions. It has nothing to do with what people think, by the way. I mean, it's not like what the reason they think that they're cool and rational and they're weighing the logical arguments. None of that matters. You tell me like one or two, three things about someone, like where they're from, what their parents, how their parents voted, or religious beliefs, and you can tell everything you need to know about someone. Not just how they're going to vote, but their feelings about money, what their income's going to be, what their average lifespan's going to be, whether or not they're going to be overweight. So many things you can tell. What Silicon Valley does now is track all that data, but nothing is a secret anymore, but all you need is some basic information about someone to determine a lot about them. But as I was doing some of this polling data, I came across a guy who's, an open racist. This is not someone I promote or anything, but it's, just David Duke. He was the Klansman. And he has this book, which I don't recommend anyone goes through. But it's an interesting thing, because I had a discussion with him. He's actually, you can call him up and you've talked to him on his cell phone. It's not that he has a following, but I'm always fascinated by like extreme characters. I like to talk to him. And so when I talked to him about some of the ideas he was describing, where basically this idea, this is like a terrible thing to say, and you shouldn't say it, but he's like, in America, we have the Jewish population is 1% of America. By the way, I'm saying this as someone who's part, I was, in my immediate family, I have Muslims, Hindus, and Jews. I'm saying this as the problem as he would define it, right? He said, in America, we have 1% of our population is Muslim, 1% are Jews, and 1% are Hindu, right? And he said, yet if you look at where these people are scattered income-wise, right, they're at the top. Like we're the highest income earners in America. Who are they? And it's them. And he describes as now what he's saying. When people call him racist or anti-Semitic or he's discriminatory or all this stuff, very rarely do people attack the numbers of his arguments, because the numbers that he just went over are true. I mean, they're. Look, I'm saying this as someone who is that. No one can be offended more than me, right? But I'm saying that he's right. If you look at any hospital, if you look at Silicon Valley, you look at Hollywood, any industry basically, you look at the top and you're going to find those groups of people at the top all the time. And yet they only represent 1% of the country. So how is it that they get there? Is it that they're so smart? Is it that they're so, brilliant and so, epically, they're so great with leadership, or so great at, so industrious? And yes, that's part of it. But if you want to see how much of a fallacy that is. Just go look at the countries they come from. And I know how that sounds. Look, I'm saying this as someone. Look, I have family in India, in Pakistan, in Israel. Look, I'm not saying that I'm not just follow me here, because when you look at those countries, you're not going to look at those countries and think, wow, these people are geniuses. Like they're not. This is like real mental powerhouse stuff here, right? That's not what you're going to walk away thinking. And so it's not intelligence. It's not, because if that was the case, where is it represented there? You don't see this spike, and you don't think like, wow, these are the top go-getters. What happens is that you come here with the perspective of knowing what America really is, understanding that it is an amusement park. None of this stuff is real. When we're talking about the quarantine stuff that's happening, there's a lot of beautiful things that are happening too. Whether, I don't know how much this stuff is true. National Geographic did an expose on this stuff, but the parts that they are saying are true is that that the monkeys, there are monkeys now in Thailand for the first time. The dolphins in Italy. There's fish and aquatic life in Venice. There's deer in Japan that have never been in places they've never been into. Birds of totally new species and totally new areas, new species in new areas. In China, the amount of asthma attacks from the air quality has gone down by like a tenth. It was 10 times more just a week or two ago. There's a lot of brilliant things happening that maybe we take a step back and start questioning ourselves and how we make every other living thing on the planet as humans. Because to the planet, to the animals, to the environment, to the earth, it is humans that are in many ways the pandemic. And we have made everything else adjust to the way we live. And this is a moment to stop and really reflect on that. And it's the same thing in America. The two counties in Indiana that had the two counties that had the first quarantine, both of those had a spike in divorce filings. So it's like the more you spend time with your spouse, it's like, oh my God, I want to kill this person. And it's crazy because those filings are during the quarantine. It's like you're going to risk getting sick to just say, I want to divorce you. Like it's an interesting thing, because I hear this all the time from people that say, oh, well, I don't know about my area. Your area is America. Only filling yourself up with gratitude will get you to see it for what it is. And when people talk about their family members, oh, my brother, my sister, my parents, or other relationships, other people I have around me aren't supporting me, this is a great time in life to look at decisions you've had for a long time, like the way we live, or like the people we surround ourselves with, and really start to question. I'm not saying to divorce people, but really start to question the decisions that we've made. When people tell me that they've got these bad relationships in their life, or they're surrounding themselves, or they've got people around them that are not great, look, when you don't think much of yourself, you're going to surround yourself with people who agree, right? When you don't see your own brilliance, you're going to surround yourself with other people who don't see it either. Every relationship, there's only one bad relationship, one toxic relationship, one suboptimal relationship you have in your life, and that's the relationship you have with yourself. Every other relationship is based on, every other relationship is a derivative of, every other relationship is a reflection of your relationship with yourself, So when people, there's a lot more people spending time at home and spending time with their kids and spending time, it's a great thing, eating dinner together. It's really important, though, that we just, that you understand the perspective of what you have when people sit like, oh, I'm in quarantine, I can't do anything. Really? You're bored? You look at like social media anywhere, you're bored? Think about what would you have done in the 70s, the 80s, even just the 90s, just a few years ago. The only way you could have a lack of opportunity or boredom or whatever at a time like right now is because it's like a major deficiency that you've got in your own head. You know what I mean? Your own stuff. And what I was saying about the America stuff is that when you consider what America is, when people come here, I remember when I was quite young, I wrote this story when I was 10 years old. I saw this couple, it's like it's kind of a thing that when I talk about it, I always get to this place. I'll try, I don't want to start, there's some things in my life that have happened that when I talk about it, I try to talk about a lot so that I get over it, but when I talk about them, I still go back to this place. I remember this boy and this girl, I was at a wedding, and they were taking all the food left over. Anna actually just wrote about this. They were taking all the food. They were just taking handfuls of food off everyone's plates, the food that people left on their plates, basically what you consider trash. They were taking that and putting it all in a trash bag. And I was like, what the hell are they doing with all that stuff? They're just putting it all in a trash bag. And I followed them. They went to this little city, basically they're homeless, living in like half a tent. And they were sitting there, and when they sat down with their family, they had a mother and father. They were my age. The girl was my age. The boy was a little bit younger. And they had this little metal plate. They took out a metal plate, and they reached into this trash bag and pulled out a handful of eaten food. So imagine you pull out like a half-eaten chicken wing, but it's also got, gravy from another dish, and it's also got, lentils and rice from somebody else's plate, and you put it into this plate, and then they started. I remember when they pulled it out and they opened up the trash. They opened up that trash bag. One of the things I never realized is that what makes trash smell like trash, much of it is food, right? If you just have like, the paper towels or plastic stuff, it doesn't really smell. It's the food. I remember when they opened up that bag, I was standing like 10 feet away, and the smell was like nauseating. And then when I saw what they were eating, it actually made me start to gag a little bit. Like they were just eating. I have to this day, when I sit down and every time I go out to eat, and I don't want to, put, hand to the Lord and swear on this, because there may have been a few times in my life, but as far as I can remember, every single time I've ever eaten out, Anna just did this, and that's what she wrote about. I stop for a second, I look around at everyone's plates around me, and I look and imagine what it would be like if I was in such a position where I had to take the food off of those plates as a child, right? Off of those plates, put it all into a trash bag, eating the food off. I mean, just think about that, about all the people around you. Next time you go out to eat, look at their plates. Just look at the plates when they're done. And imagine that's what you eat for a meal. That's what you've got as a meal. To them, it was like a 7-course meal. To me, it was going to make me vomit. And I remember at that moment, being 10 years old, I remember looking at that, thinking how grateful, how lucky I am that I have had such a life that I can look at what they look at as a 7-course, gourmet meal, and they're thrilled and grateful for it, and it, like, actually just the smell of it, and just the idea, knowing that I'm not going to eat it, just the idea of eating it makes me want to vomit. That is the kind of shit that happens with foreigners when they come here to America. That's what happens. That's why you see them at the top of everything, because they have that perspective, right? You come here and you are like an uncuffed fucking crackhead, man. You're not going to ever be, you know what I'm saying? Like, honestly, I've never been outworked. It's not even, I don't even, when I talk to students or clients or anybody, I don't even expect them to match my hustle by even the half, or even 10%. I know you're not going to get even to 5 or 10%. I'm sure of it. I don't even need to worry about that, right? That's not even a consideration. That's what happens. That's why you see people at the top. If you doubt that, just look at what happens with their kids, like my kids, like people who don't see it, who never have lived it. I remember looking at that boy and that girl, realizing that I just won what Bill Gates calls the sperm lottery, right? That's the only reason I'm not them. That's the only reason, by the way, you're not them. That's the only reason you're not them, right? That's the only reason you're not, and anyone listen to this, it's the only reason you're not there, the only reason you're not looking, you're not going to a place like the Cheesecake Factory and going around to, random 20, think about the last 20 people that ate there and looking at their plates and just scraping the food off their plates. The only reason you don't have that life is because you won what Bill Gates calls that sperm lottery. That's it. It had nothing to do with you. And it's only realizing that we really appreciate America, and especially in this time and understanding what's about to come. You did nothing special. You don't deserve any of this stuff. There's nothing unique or amazing or spectacular. You were just a sperm that happened to be born in the greatest time in history. Of all, the 110 billion people that have been on Earth, you are on that lucky 5 billion. It's like I was talking about earlier with the slavery. This is the best time to be alive. Just think about what you did to end slavery. Nothing. It was done for you, right? And that's just one of a million things we have right now. And this position we're in right now, that, when you really fill yourself up with that gratitude, it changes everything you do. This is why these people have so much drive, so much they're able to do and accomplish so much. It isn't because they're so smart. It's because they have a different set of thoughts. It's a different perspective. Helen Keller, it was this great quote she had. She said, what you truly love never leaves you. What you truly love, it's like when you, and it's the same thing with gratitude. It's like there's a famous saying about dead people get more flowers than living people. And the idea behind that is, for most people, we put more energy into regret than gratitude. Right? If you reverse that and just focus on gratitude, what gratitude really means is you become invincible. You become bulletproof, Oh, you were asking me earlier about that challenge. We'll just do that right now. I want you to think about the monster in me, what we described earlier. So I'll pick, well, let's say where you're at right now. So your business is doing pretty well. You're making more money right now than you've ever made before, right? About $10,000, $15,000 a month. And you've never made that at a total in your life, let alone just from side income. Like this is, and by the way, all the income she makes from her business is kind of side income, because her job still to this day is, she's a special needs instructor. She has a full-time job. It's like this is all just been a really big, really successful side hustle. And by the way, the reason why special needs kids and why we have such great work with them is because they also have that same perspective, like the foreigners, like people who understand what America is. When somebody who's been treated or has thought their whole life they're not going to be able to ever get a normal job or ever interact with people normally, when they realize they can do those things, the sky's the limit. They go completely nuts because they look at normal things. The ability, we have one of our kids we talk about often who has to pump his lung up with oxygen while talking to sellers. He has enough air for about 3 to 5 sentences or about a conversation. So and when he goes longer than that, he's having to pump up his own air, 3 to 5 deep breaths. He's having to pump up his air into his lungs as he's communicating. Do you think a guy like that wonders if shit works in his area? You think he's ever going to be like, well, it's a tough economy. Oh, well, people are scared right now. Get the fuck out of here, right? It's all about perspective. I'm going to prove it to you right now. So let's, and I know you guys aren't like this, but let's say that there's an LC out there that's like, oh, that's a bunch of horseshit. Okay, I want you, if you're listening to this or you're going to do this live, I'm going to do this live here, but you can do this at home too. So just think about all your challenges. So in your case, let's say you have to get to 100 grand a month, right? That seems really challenging, right? Or 30 grand a month, or just get to your first 10 grand a month or whatever. The distance from where you are to getting there seems really big, really enormous, right? And if we were to put all those challenges, all those hurdles, if we were to put them into one entity, like one monster, we call this the monster in me. That monster would be like 1,000 feet tall, and it has 100 teeth. Each tooth is like 100 feet long, and they're razor sharp, and it's just right. It's just he eats Jaws for breakfast, right? It's like this giant, enormous monster. It's 1,000 feet, 10,000 feet tall, and you are this tiny little 6-inch, 1-inch guy. You're 1 inch tall. This monster's 1,000 feet tall. That's how it feels, right? Our challenges, all this stuff that we've got going on, right? Because my life in America is so hard, right? All that stuff. So here's what most people do. If we look at that, I could try to motivate you and tell you how, you got to work hard and discipline, all that stuff that you've heard. None of it is true. Ultimately, the only people that the ultra high achievers, they don't work hard. They are addicted to what they do. It's fun. They look at their work, quote unquote, the same way kids look at playing Mario Kart. It's the same thing like video games. It's the same. If you can gamify it, if it can be fun and addictive, then you never work a day in your life, especially when you're doing what you love. It's like Steve Jobs said, when you have a result, the only way to do great work is to love what you're doing and to spend any time on things other than that. One other thing he said that has always stuck with me, he said, realizing, especially right now, we should think about this a lot, is that if you tell yourself that you're going to die today, one day you'll surely be right. He read this quote. He said, it meant a lot to me because I thought, whenever I look at myself in the mirror, I ask myself, if today were the last day I would live, would I do what I'm about to do right now? And anytime the answer has been no for too many days in a row, you have to change something. But realizing that you're going to die, death, Steve Jobs said, is the best motivator ever. Because you came here naked, you're going to leave naked, and really don't ever think that you have much to lose, And it's like when people talk about the economy stuff, and they're like, oh, the economy. Now, whenever people complain about the economy, it's like it was in 2008. It's like, man, there's like banned words around us. You're not allowed to ever say that. But it's interesting. Now there's this movement of people saying that, old people should go basically to work to serve their country, even though they're going to die and, they might get sick and die. And we're doing all this just for money. Like, I know it seems kind of weird for me to say that, but like money is often a distraction. The less money means to you, the wealthier you are. And it's important, like when we talk about our relationship with the environment and with animals and, how they're much better off when we stay at home, should tell us something about the way we live. And, these are questions that we should have ourselves. It's like Voltaire said, judge a man by his questions, not by his answers. And it's the questions that we ask ourselves and our focus. It really makes a big difference. I'm going to do this for you right now. Like I said, I'm going to put this whole thing about perspective. This is the only thing you really need to fix. Because as far as how to make money and how to build your business, we go over that shit 1,000 different ways. Like any one class is like epic, and you've got more than you're ever going to need to know from that. But really, when you put that on a shitty architecture, or if you're going to be an LC about stuff, it doesn't really matter. We want to put that. You got to bring the right version of yourself to the party. If that is the architecture, if that's the blueprint, if that's the thinking that you're at, when you move your brain to that level of thinking, it's like we were talking earlier with the brain, and you can actually measure thoughts, the wavelength, the frequency of a thought. It actually has energy. It radiates a pulse, a wave we can see. Certain thoughts have low frequency. Other thoughts have high frequency. They have a high tone. They have a high resonance, a high vibration. They're higher thoughts. They're better thoughts. And it's like when you hit those types of thoughts, the other thoughts become invisible to you. And it's like you send out that radio signal to only people that are tuned into that station. So that's why we attract what we're like, right? When you want to be what you seek, and your thoughts alone, the things you talk about, what you say, the way you carry yourself, is attractive to the right person, and it's unattractive to the LCs, the people that you don't want to be around. And it's an important thing now more than ever to be focused on the right set of thoughts. So we'll try this right now. I'll show you what I mean right now. Think about all your challenges. It's that giant monster, 1,000 feet high. You're 1 inch high, right? So now the question is, right, that you got to motivate yourself. You got to get out and get hard. I'm not going to do any of that stuff, okay? I'm not even going to go there. All I want to do is just talk to you for 30 seconds, all right? I want to tell you a quick story about my cousin. He always wanted to get into law enforcement, but there's no money in it, so he went to Silicon Valley, first made some money, and then he eventually got into law enforcement. And he eventually got to the FBI. First, he was a cop, just a street, like a beat cop, and then he was a detective, and then he was eventually in the FBI. But his first day in the NYPD, it was 2004, I believe, 2003, maybe 2002. It was a Halloween day, and he told me a story I've never forgotten. Where he said they got a call of a young man who was like, 23, 25, and he fell down on the subway tracks, and the subway ran him over. And it ran him over right beneath his chest, and it did so in such a bizarre way that he was actually, his body was spread out over 10 or 20 feet. Everything below his middle chest, his lower chest, was like spaghetti, all of it, right? Just, there's nothing they can do. But he was okay. He was talking. He wasn't in any pain or anything. And he's sitting there with this subway over him from his chest down. And they had medical people come out, and people started gathering, and they were praying, and they were crying. And they're sitting there thinking, listen, how can we save this guy? But there's nothing they can do. And they looked, and they tried. There was even, I think there was a surgeon that just happened to be there. And he said, look, there's nothing we can do. And I can't believe he's still alive right now. I don't know how he's talking. But the guy was totally fine. He was having full conversations, no pain at all. And they tell him, they say, listen, if we lift the subway, you're going to die. If we drive the subway, as soon as we move it, you're going to die. If we don't do anything, you're probably about to die as it is. We don't know how you're even okay right now. We're sorry, but there's nothing we can do. So we're going to try and move the subway, but you're most likely, like, this is it. You're going to die. And my cousin's partner said to this guy, this young man, this beautiful young man, right? You fall in love with him. Like, what a thing. They said, hey, do you want us to call anybody? And he said, yeah, can you call my mom? And so they called his mom, and it went to voicemail, went to answer machine. She didn't answer. And he left her a voicemail, a 30-second voicemail on her answering machine. And I have thought, all these years, I've thought how many times she must have listened to that answer. Like, man, how many times she must have. I don't know. I wonder, would it have been better to answer the phone? Because she probably wouldn't have had it recorded. Or would it have been better that she didn't answer the phone? I don't know. I don't. It's just such a crazy thought. But I've wondered how many times she must have listened to that recording where she knows every noise, every background noise, every scratch on the tape, every little tiny nuance, She must have run that to the fucking tape wore out, you know what I mean? It's just like, I think about that a lot, about how she listened to that, how many times she must listen to that message that he left her. And then moved the train, and unfortunately he passed away. But here's what I want you to think about. Imagine that happens to you. You've got 30 seconds to live. It's sure you're going to die. There's nothing anyone can do. You're not in any pain, though. You have one phone call. Don't say anything. Just stay where you're sitting. I want you to think about who would you call and what would you say. Got it? All right. Now, that in mind, let's go back and look at the monster in you. How tall does that monster seem now? Right? Right? It's like nothing. That monster is now 1 inch, and how big do you seem? You're 1,000 feet. You've got razor sharp teeth. You've got that jackhammer from hell. You've got the axe and the chainsaw and the machine gun, and you've got all the weapons. The monster has nothing, right? That's the same thing everyone goes through. And I didn't talk about your problems at all, right? I don't need to. I don't need to go down there and talk about how they're really nothing and it's just in your head. I don't need to do any of that, right? All I have to do is give you the right perspective. And that's what it's like when you understand that America is a giant amusement park. And you just think about if somebody was watching you right now, or to anyone listening to this, if somebody was watching you over the last 1 minute, think about the shift you've had. You've taken all of your life's problems, and you basically thought they were nothing. This ain't no thing. I can go through this. The change you go through is life-changing, right? Just in a few seconds. But if somebody were watching you, they wouldn't see any change, right? You didn't have to pump yourself up or motivate yourself. All you need is a little bit of perspective and realize how often, so much of the things we focus on, it's just horseshit. It's just meaningless. It's not, we focus on so much stupid shit. All of us do this, right? And it's like Chris Rock said, America is the only country in the world where there's so much food that people are allergic to it. You know, it's like, you ever meet an Ethiopian who's lactose intolerant, right? This is what happens in America. You get around everyone. Like if you don't let it, I've said this for a while now. America's the only country where you can make billions of dollars telling people how to eat less, right? And it's true. It's like, this is where it's important to have some perspective, because if you don't have perspective, you're going to fill yourself up with the nonsense that you had in your head a second ago. Again, I'm not talking about your problems, but when you understand how just a little bit of focus, a little bit of perspective, a little bit of gratitude, how far it can go and what it can do for you, and what it can, it fills you up to a point where you just get out of bed like a bullet, and none of this stuff. When people talk about the shelves are empty, this is only in America. Would you go to any, we did this earlier, right? We had people go out to we went to a few grocery stores. We had people take 360 videos at the grocery store, and you show that video to anybody outside of America, and you try to tell them that the shelves are empty. There's plenty of food, but it's a food that you don't want, right? It's like not my branded Pop-Tarts, or it's like, it's salad and like, fruit and veggies and fag stuff. Like, it's all the stuff you don't want to eat. By the way, I'm not above this. What the hell am I doing at the gas station and seeing that they don't have that Kit Kat XL? It's not the king size one. It's a one bigger than that. It's enormous, right? They don't have that. And I'm like, oh, this is bullshit. And I had to catch myself. Wait, what am I talking about? They do have Kit Kats. They have king size Kit Kats. I could get that, right? I could get 2 regular Kit Kats, or 2 king size Kit Kats, but that's not enough, right? I need the one that's as big as a fucking yoga mat, right? Otherwise, it's like, what is this, the Holocaust? Like, what is going on? What is happening? This is what happens. Man, it's like, DJ Khaled just said, you need to be turning pages, not channels. Like, this time is time you should use to read and to get better and to improve yourself. Very few people are going to do that, and that's why most people are, ultimately not going to be much better off. But you cannot let America get to you, because it will turn you into a big fucking pussy, and you'll never get anywhere. You'll just be one of the brainless people that walks around not understanding that you're in the single greatest time and you're in the single greatest place in history. This stuff is what ultimately changes who you are as a person. It enables you to take advantage of these opportunities, and enables you to become a better version of yourself. It is this blueprint of thinking, these types of thoughts, that is the only reason, like, when we talked about earlier, one of the special needs kids, there's a guy named Muhammad Zeke, who is he was a refugee from Afghanistan. He came to America in like the 70s. His son had special needs, and so he couldn't afford He couldn't afford to do anything. And this woman took him in, took care of his son, and helped him out. And he decided, he was an engineer, very smart guy. He decided that he was going to dedicate his life to doing that. And so that's what he does. He has his home, and he finances it himself, and through fundraising, and he basically takes care. He has room for about 10 to 20 kids, and he takes care of kids that are basically orphaned. So there's these no questions asked places where if you bring a kid in, no matter what the situation is, they'll take them in. A lot of these places overseas, they do this. They'll just, like in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, if a kid has special needs, they'll just take him out into the fucking woods and just leave him there. And they'll just give him like a day or two's worth of food and water and say, what, it's in God's hands. It's easy to judge people like that, but really, they're so poor and they don't know what to do. And over there, kids are an asset. You know what I mean? Like, kids should be out there working on the farm or going and making money. They don't know how to deal with these things. So we are developing now the first catalog way of identifying what these special needs are and ways that you can communicate with them, so that we can empower people, hopefully, to look, this kid isn't just, because they don't have any, when you have no distinctions, that's what intelligence really is, categorizing and classifying. You can say, it's not just, oh, this kid's fucked up, let me go throw him in the woods. It's like, okay, here's his issue, and here's how I can deal with it, and how we can have him be like productive, and we can communicate with him. So that's what we're developing now. So hopefully they can use more of that. We've set so many records. We have the largest special needs, the first escape rooms over there, the largest special needs owned escape rooms, all kinds of stuff. High fives, right? There we go. So much great stuff that we've got going on. But ultimately, when we look at how, when people, whether they're struggling, it doesn't have to be a special needs issue. I'm just saying, when somebody is in that category, you get a deep sense of gratitude when you're around people like that. One of these young girls, she was 7 years old. She had massive seizures. She was handicapped. She actually, her seizures were so bad that she became paralyzed. She had severed her spinal column. She became paralyzed, first from the waist down, then from the neck down. And she had seizures so bad she would still break her arms and legs. Then she went deaf and blind. So she's deaf and blind and paralyzed from the neck down, 7 years old. And her parents had left her at the hospital, basically. They just left her there. There was no questions asked. And then he took her in, and he's watching her, and she has an advanced form of cancer. So she didn't have much time at this time that I'm talking about. And this reporter came in and saw her rubbing her nose on this table, and she's like, "What is she doing right now?" And he said, "Oh, well, she's studying. She taught herself how to read Braille, and she's studying for a test." Right? Like, oh my God, right? Like, this is just like somebody who's sitting there studying for this test. One day, this man and woman came in to his, it's like a house, but it's also like a little center. So it's like a big house. And the woman started crying and went back to the car, didn't make it into the house. The guy came in, sat down in like the lobby area for a few minutes, and then left. And the girl wrote, she can write with her mouth if she puts a pen in her mouth. And she wrote, those were my parents. I could tell by the smell. That was my father. And so he goes out to see this guy, and they're in the car, and the woman starts crying, and she says, "Listen, I am sorry. I hope one day she can forgive us." And they drove off. And unfortunately, she ended up passing away not too long ago. And at the funeral, he saw at a distance at the funeral that the parents had come. And he went to them, and he gave them this envelope, this letter. They opened up the letter, and I never forgot what the letter said. It said, it was written by this girl. She wrote this letter to her parents. And it said, "I understand why you did what you did. I'm not mad. I forgive you. Thank you for doing your best. I love you." Right? Like, this is somebody who was dying. And she knew she was dying. And she knew what they did. And one of the things that she thought she needed to do before she left was make sure that they were okay. I say that to you for this reason. Think about that monster in me again. Because the whole monster in me thing is that the monster, there's a giant monster, the monster of hustle, ambition, gratitude. It's within you. But you're not feeding that monster, right? It's like the story of the two wolves. One of them has all despair and is a downer and is an LC. The other one's just a badass, the best version of you possible. Which wolf will win? The one you feed, right? So when you think about, like, I think about that girl quite often, probably every day. And I never met her. I never got a chance to meet her. But imagine if she was in your life for just one moment. Do you think in a million years she'd ever have the thoughts that you've got, right? It's all about perspective. That's where you get, so it's not just about like gratitude and being grateful and #blessed and stuff like that. No, it's about really having, when you surround yourself, when you go to, it's why I recommend volunteering. It's one of the first things, no matter who you are, just start volunteering 1 hour a week, starting right now. Because you get around people. One of our good friends says, "I used to complain that I had no shoes until I met a man that had no feet." This is what you've got to do. You've got to get that perspective around you. Because when you fill yourself up with that stuff, you'll never be worried about, the stupid shit again. I wouldn't say it's about that. I wouldn't say it's about, being scared or being concerned. You're a pussy when you're not being grateful. When you fill yourself up with gratitude enough, there's no room for anything else. You know what I'm saying? It's like, Martin Luther King said, I've decided to stick with love. Hate is a burden too great to bear. Right? But it's not just hate. Fear is a burden too great to bear. Dale Carnegie, in that book, you had actually sent this to me, and it was one of the first quotes I had read in that, because I never read that full book, but it's the how to not worry and live your life or whatever. But he mentions it, the first chapter, or it's the first few chapters, it's at the very beginning, that the reason he wrote the book is that people were going around ringing doorbells to sell the smallpox vaccine. And he said, the quote was, "In all my years, I've never seen anyone come to sell the vaccine, or nobody rung my doorbell to warn me about the sickness of worry, an illness that during the same time had caused 10,000 times more damage than smallpox." What a time, right? Exactly. What a time, right? What a time to hear that. When we have a situation, the fear and the reaction is far worse than the actual cause of the disease itself. We had shootings and chaos happening before anything. When I say that, that's, of course, the media's focus on that, right? If that's all you focus on. If all I do is focus on, and whatever you focus on enlarges, and that's what you believe applies to a much larger group of the population. Shakespeare said that the coward dies 1,000 deaths, right? But only has a valiant taste once. If you just tell yourself you're going to be fine, everything's going to be okay, if you tell yourself that every day, every time, no matter what, you're only going to be wrong at most once, right? Right? In that same chapter, it was led by the surgeon who we read about before. He was a Nobel Prize winner. He said, "Those who do not learn how to fight worry die young," and the worst death is when the death you don't know about, right? So you're dying. This idea, the idea that you could be an American right now and be concerned, and that's a, obviously we want, our parents, everyone should be healthy and okay. But the idea that you're going to sit back and retract and be a pussy and be, just, submit to all this dog shit is just really fucking crazy. I mean, look at the stuff that you guys are seeing. Look at, we're talking about real kids. Like some of the stuff we're not legally allowed to talk about. We deal with, special needs, mental illness, handicaps, and addiction. That's what all falls within our special needs group. And these people have real serious problems. They're going out there hustling, making it happen, even under quarantine, even from their house. This is the time to go out and make it happen. It's, Emerson said, when you do what you fear, the death of fear is certain. You need to be killing that fear. So my answer to anyone who's concerned or anything is you've got to kill that fear. Ultimately, if you look at your life, when have you made great decisions based out of fear? Ever? No. The worst is when you come from that place of fear and resentment and scarcity. You're always going to make shitty decisions, right? The highest paid people at Facebook. I've asked people this quite often. Who are the highest paid people at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram? All the people, all these media. These manipulators and the propagandists that we have in our media and on our social media. Who are the highest paid people? I don't mean the people, not the people who have the most money, but the highest paid people. And it's the psychologists. It's the behavior engineers. It's the clinical psychologists and psychiatrists, the people who look at human behavior and alter human behavior. Look at any time Facebook has to reveal information about how they alter people's moods just by changing the stories that they expose people to in their feed. And they can control people's moods and even their likelihood of committing suicide and their likelihood of having suicidal thoughts. They're able to engineer these thoughts in our minds because we give them that power. If you don't brainwash yourself, the media, the social media people, all these twats on the internet, all these morons, they're all happy to do it for you, right? If you don't control your thoughts, if you don't keep your head where it needs to be, if you don't focus on the right frequency of thought, keeping your thoughts in the right place, keeping your head in the right place, focusing on the right type of attitude and the right type of mindset and keeping your gratitude full. If you don't do that, other people will be happy to do that for you. They're going to be happy to control your addictions, to control what gives you dopamine hits. That's how we get involved, addicted to things like porn and stuff. Hero narration, what you're saying, hero narration is one of those really cool things. So we start to narrate your life like a comic book. This is something we started doing to work with some of these kids. It was a really cool thing. So like I'd say, the hero is going to work out today. Or the hero worked out today, even though he was tired, and a lesser man would have quit. The hero still, pulled through. And so we take kids who, it's sometimes easier to talk about yourself in the third person. So at the end of the day, they would write down, they would narrate their story. They would basically, they would make notes of times like that throughout the day, and then at the end of the day, they'd write it out in a comic book form. So it'd be almost like a journal. They would start doing hero narration. They would write down their day like it was a journal. The hero today worked out. The hero today studied for his test or whatever. And then it was Alex who started narrating it out loud because this was for kids who were nonverbal, but he was verbal, and so he could speak. And so he started narrating it out loud, like through audio and video. And so some of the kids like with Down syndrome, they're able to verbalize words. They were able to do this too, where they would say at the end of the day that the hero studied and he aced the test. That was a good thing. And then it kind of morphed into where it is right now, where its narration is done out loud during the moment. And this is like hilarious. So we take the fork in the road approach. Basically, there's two versions of yourself. This is how to use hero narration to become a badass and to do like epic stuff every day. We have to have a binary choice. There's two versions of you that live within you. One is the LC version, like those two wolves. It's the LC that always wants to do stupid shit, just wants to watch porn and masturbate all day. That's it, right? And then you have the badass version of you, the best version of you. Someone said that hell is on the day you die. The person that you did become meets the person that you could have become, right? The difference is in these tiny little micro decisions throughout the day. So we have two versions of yourself. One is the LC, one's the badass. So the algorithm basically is that you explain what the LC wants to do, but why the hero wins anyway. So this is one algorithm. You would say, for example, you sit down to make calls, and what happens? You're sitting down to make calls, and all of a sudden you realize that you haven't cleaned the garage in years, right? Right, this happens to everyone. So that's the LC talking. So we give it a name. We say, even though the LC wanted me to clean garages, the hero won anyway and made the calls anyway because he's a hero and that's what a hero does, right? So we narrate that, and you can do it at the moment. Like when you sit down, I know it sounds kind of weird, but start doing it in the moment, where you're just in the moment. Say the hero was concerned that he wasn't going to have time to work out, but he knew that that was just the LC talking and he was going to win. So you explain that it's the LC, and then why would the hero win? And you fill in that blank. The hero was going to do the work anyway. The hero was going to make it happen anyway because, and fill in that blank. And it's been a really interesting thing because, right, we do this now. I do this all the time now. And it's like, whether it's working out or eating right or making calls, we all have things throughout the day that the LC does, or the LC will say, oh, let's watch Netflix, right? But the hero did the right thing anyway because he knew that it was his time to build his empire, right? Like, we start doing this stuff and you start talking about yourself, always refer to yourself as the hero. And then everyone in your life, like, you have these social situations, when you do it with other people, it's one thing to talk when you're by yourself. But when you do it with other people, it's pretty funny too, because we've had some great stories that we've been using in our book about this. Because, when you look at yourself as a comic book hero, everyone in your life kind of plays a role. Like, you have a sidekick, you have the love interest, right? And so I think it was Brandon, who was talking to his wife, and he said, while he was talking to her, in the middle of the conversation, he said, she knew the hero was right, and she would apologize to him later. And she's like, wait, what? No, I'm not going to apologize. And then he's like, and he will accept her apology later. Like, and you can have a lot of fun with this while you're talking to people. In the middle of a conversation, just start saying the hero. We have people who do this when they're talking to sellers. The hero was concerned why the seller was being so thick-headed, right? Like, just start narrating your story about people while you're talking to those people, while you're interacting with those people. One of the best examples here was, I don't know what his name is in the book. I know his real name, but I won't use it. He's struggled socially for some time, and he had, physical issues, but he's been working out and he's been getting better. And he went and did this dance, which is like the goofiest dance you've ever seen in your life. And he was doing that, right? That dance that's exactly where it came from. So he did this goofiest dance, and then he started saying nobody could take their eyes off the hero as he danced the night away. And he was doing this like goofy dance. And these are around the Gen Ed kids. Like, often some people would be concerned that they would make fun of him, but they didn't because they had a great time with him. And he said all the girls knew that if they kept watching him, he was going to get them all pregnant. And everybody just burst laughing, because the whole place, and this was around like the Gen Ed kids. It became this like this really funny thing, and people started doing the next day. There was the rest of that night. And then the next day, people started doing the exact same dance. And now they break out in the dance, and they call it the fertility dance, these kids do now. But he has become this, like, kind of, man on campus, like this kind of cool kid now. And he was someone who had very limited communication with people before. He's been able to not only build his confidence, but his communication skills. And eventually he was able to get a job. And it's, he has limited time, and it's, there's still some challenges there, but this is something that was unheard of just a year ago during his assessment, saying that he was too sheltered, he was too, he would rarely talk to anybody or have any confidence. But by having a hero narration, it's not that he doesn't look at it like he's talking to people, and he does this 24/7. He never talks directly to somebody. He was like, the hero was confused about how to fold the clothes or whatever at his job. And through hero narration, he's able to communicate, express thoughts, and gain social acceptance. These things that are really important. Eleanor Roosevelt said, nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. It's important. The hero narration lets you take that back. You can't be made to feel less than without your permission. Nobody can do that. And what we do, this has been a fix for some of these kids, but it's also been something that, I don't want to say normal people, but this is something you should start doing. Start focusing on that hero version of yourself, the superhero version of yourself, and start bringing him out of you with hero narration. Even if you just start saying it, you're not actually doing it, the fact that that the LC is winning in some cases versus the hero narration, it really helps you get your stuff, bring those things out of you, and you can get a much better perspective on things. Yeah, to apply, I haven't worked with students, and I don't work with students very often. And the reason I work with her is because she's just such a fucking badass. And should I tell the story about how I knew that, and I'll tell that story later about how I knew, because I knew her personally, and it's kind of weird. That never happens when somebody, when she saw what we were doing with the special needs people, she never. I'm amazed at how many people rarely ask any questions. Ever since I was, when I work around realtors, and even closing agents, they'd see how much money we were making, see how many deals we're doing, and almost never does anybody ask any questions. It's like too much ego or pride or whatever you want to call it. They just don't do it. She did not do that. She was all over me like white on rice. Like, how are you doing this? Who are you? How do you do this? She just asked so many questions. And so I don't turn people I know into students, so I had to work with Millie at first, and then I took over when I saw how great she was and how amazing she was. But ultimately, like, when people look at paying $5 or $10 or $15 or $20,000 as you guys did, most people look at that, right? You're like, because most people look at that as a scam, like, oh God, that's just. And those are people that we don't want to even have anything to do with. Don't even spend time with those people. Everybody, part of having gratitude is to have gratitude that you can pay with money. You don't have to pay with blood or your freedom, as most people have. Most people that came to America, about half the people, depending on which surge we look at, came as either slaves, obviously with like black people, but indentured slaves, which was legal slavery. You would come to America knowing that your entire life you would never, ever get anywhere. You would never be more than just a slave. You would never, you'd always be someone, that this family's servant. And you're doing that because the idea is that your kids would be able to eventually have freedom. This is what's happening right now overseas. It's one of the things we've been fighting in the legal process in Pakistan, where people have, Pakistan, I should say, right? People have, you owe money to somebody, and they give you this enormous debt, and the debt basically gets handed down to your kids. So they're not only getting your slavery, but they're getting your kids' slavery, and et cetera. Basically, it's slavery. So as soon as we put a contract in place where we have a defined end date, now we can say it's not slavery, and the kids, anybody, it's amazing, it's so inspiring to me what people will go through. They will go through slavery 10, 15, 20 hours a day. It's the same thing happened in America, why there's been, when people don't really freak out or get upset or get crazy or pissed or do anything nuts, when they see that there's a future for their kids. But when they don't see that, when they see, you know what, I'm doing all this stuff and my kids are going to be doing the exact same thing, they're not going to even be 1 inch ahead of me, that creates a problem. And that is what people are realizing more than ever right now, is that everything is generational. All wealth essentially is generational. When you look at anyone with money today, it's because they were born with it. I go over this in the SA class. There's almost no social mobility where somebody on purpose changes their income class and has income ascension. It doesn't happen. And when you look at how fucking easy it is, I mean, my God, we're doing it with like a sign, right? We have kids doing it right now, renting out. You just did a class and it's renting out like $1, coming up with a mascot, renting it out, making $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $10,000 a month, doing this for charity groups, doing it without leaving their house. I mean, it's really easy when you get trained correctly. The only people we, moving forward, should work with are people who are thankful and grateful to be able to pay such, when you talk about paying $20,000, is it worth paying 20 grand to make 20 grand a month, which both you on track to get to? I mean, that's the mentality you need to have. I paid over 30 grand just to learn how to write a letter, right? And that's how my friends look at it, like, my God, you're making all this money. Why do you care? I wanted to learn from the best. I wanted to learn I knew that I'd make that back, every month. And that's the attitude that you want to have. Anything other than that, and you're just going to deal with a dickhead. They're going to take up your time. They're just going to be just a fucking pain in the ass. They're going to ask stupid shit. Nothing works in their area. They're going to be the most important thing you're going to do. The most important question you ever ask yourself is, how will I spend my time today? The most important thing you're going to do and control is how you feel, because that determines everything you're going to do, right? And that is fueled by what you think about. And you want to be around great, beautiful people. There's so many great, wonderful, awesome, amazing people out there that are going to do great things for you and make great things happen. You just have to be around them. You know what I'm saying? You just got to spend time with them. And when you do that, everything will be beautiful. Everything's amazing. Everything's awesome. And you're not going to be one of these people that's out there doing stupid shit. You're not going to be belly aching, complaining. You're just going to be in a place where you're unstoppable. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm not, if we come down right now, the value, I mean, just look at the business she had. It hasn't even been 10 days. And I told her that I want you to come out of this with $100 million, right? Just look at that, the dermatology groups. They are trying to recreate what she has, but they don't have that superhighway with their fan base. They don't have that communication. So they have to go through her. They're trying to get her to, why don't you come and show us how to do this and we'll give you that equity. Right now, that business, based on the two companies that she's picked up, that business, that little department is going from $3 million to almost around $10 million, right? $3 million to $10 million. You tell me, if you go from $3 million to $10 million, it hasn't even been 10 days into this thing. We haven't even started to see what's about to happen, right? This right now, the ability to build a business, to grow your business, this skill is about to be on a higher value than anything else that's ever happened. The ability to go through the 5 crafts, turn strangers into not strangers, and do that with any kind of, to make any kind of money, to build your income, to be able to grow, do any of the stuff we talk about, build a fan base. It's all about just making friends, keeping in touch with those people, and then helping those friends. It's all you have to do. Start building, we start talking about 77s. A 77, as you know, and to anyone that's not clear on that, whenever you have a conversation with somebody, you want to rate them on a scale from 1 to 10, based on 2 things: how much you like them and how likely it is that you're going to make money with them, which basically means how well will they do for your people. If you were to, how well are they going to help people? So that's the 2 gauges. Number 1 is how well you like them. You want to work with people who are 77s or higher. You like them and you see that they're going to do a good job and you're going to make money with them. If you build your list of 177s, you're going to make 10 grand a month. Guaranteed, right? You're doing it and you don't even a third of the way there. You're doing it and you're less than that, right? So I say 100 is a high note, right? So if you talk to, let's say, 100 people, or you talk to 50 people, and or let's say you're talking to 5 people to get 177, right? So you're about 20%. So if you talk to 500 people, you're there. You have 5 conversations a day in 100 days, about 90 days, you're at 10 grand a month, right? 5 conversations a day. What if you have 10 conversations a day? You're there in about 40 days, right? Just a little over a month. And you do 15 conversations, you're there in less than that, 15, 20 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. This is how you guys follow this exact template. You can go from 0 to 10 grand a month with mathematical movement. It's not that difficult, and it's only going to get easier right now, and you're going to be at a higher value. As soon as you work with like an apartment complex or a business, as soon as they see that you're able to create money out of nothing, and the way that you're doing it is sustainable, and you're able to build, the reason these people aren't able to make money remotely is because they have a shitty relationship with the people who gave them money. Ask yourself, when's the last time you gave money to someone and they actually gave a shit about you? They actually cared about you, right? Like, that's what she does. One of her biggest asset, it's not that she's a fast talker, or that, like, a lot of people talk. I get why people don't like me sometimes. Like, I can understand that. From there, if they knew me, they would love me because people do, and I love them, and I love everyone I meet. I have absolute gratitude for everyone I come across. There's a reason that you came in my life and I'm in your life. Our stories have overlapped for a reason, and I want to help you be better off than you were 30 seconds ago before we met. That's like my attitude when I meet everyone. So if they got to know me, they would love me, I'm sure. But I get it. I get it. I mean, I get it. Like I can understand why, because I do get like excited, and sometimes it comes off as abrasive, and I really am apologetic about that. But there's nobody that doesn't fucking love her, right? I mean, really, she's like the nicest human being, like so soft-spoken, and you can barely fucking hear her. And it's just it's like, everybody loves her, and she has enormous love in her heart and compassion, and just the work she does. It's so the fact that people think that I don't work with the special needs people nearly as much as she does. She is. And I'm really only working with people that are like building businesses, or we're doing stuff like that to help them. And if they're not into that stuff, it's really, I don't spend that much time with them. She's working with, like, right now, just so you guys know how much of a badass she is. Right now, we are in a position right now, I don't know if I can say this, but if you have special needs in Indiana, anywhere in Indiana, and you are under the age of 30, in Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Michigan, and now Illinois, and the state is going to go to court, or they're going to have any kind of, it's their last ditch effort to try to help you, to try to produce, or try to, get on your feet, or it's kind of the last type of treatment. You go through her. Again, not through a different organization or group. You come to her office. They're coming from around the country now, around the Midwest, through her. The results she's having are epic. I mean, she's the Michael Jordan now of special needs stuff, of the results that we're having with people. And she's, and it's not just about money stuff. Although personally for me, we've had kids with, within mental illness is also like a handicap and terminally ill. So it's mental illness, handicap, terminally ill, addiction, and this all falls within the special needs. And we've had kids that have advanced forms of cancer, and they'll put a model in place. One young girl who unfortunately passed away. She's one of the reasons we use the word homie so much. She was the one that had that Brad Pitt. There's a scene from Meet Joe Black where he's like he's sitting there, and he's the devil, or he's death. And this black woman, this Cajun woman, sees him, and she's like, "Oh, Black Wings, the angel of death, I see." And when she sees him, because she can see him for what he is, because she's about to die, and he looks at her, and he's like, Brad Pitt, so he has this like really hot look, the hot guy look. But he can speak every language because he's dead. So he looks at her and he said, "Everything going B.I.D." The way he said it, he said, "Everything going B.I.D." That's what she said when she would go get these tests and the cancer was spreading and her days were limited. And she would always say, "Everything going B.I.D." One of the last things she said to me, she held my hand, she looked at me and said, "Everything going B.I.D." And I'd say it back to her. It's been something we've been saying for a while. "Everything going B.I.D." And unfortunately, she's no longer with us. She put a model in place, though, and I asked her, "Why are you doing this?" And she said, "My mom has lost everything because of me. The cost it was, my dad left because of the cost of my treatment, and if I can do anything to just support her money a little bit, my goal." She was talking about how much money she would need to buy a house, and her mom was short about $300, and she's like, "You know what? I want to be able to make that up for her." And in the almost year that she's passed, her mom has made about 500 to 700, almost sometimes $1,000 a month regularly from the model that she put in place. Right? Like that's what I'm saying. Doesn't that feel you? That does that perspective for you. That monster in me, right? Quit being a fucking pussy, right? That's my message to anyone worried about this stuff, man. Have gratitude. A coward's death. A coward dies 1,000 deaths. Everything's going to be fine unless it's not. And you know what? And by the way, if this is the end of the world, it's like earlier my neighbor who's kind of an asshole. He was the guy we were talking about. Not an asshole, but he's like a older. He made all his money from Lockheed Martin. He was one of the original investors, and he came over and he was like, I told my son, because he's like, he doesn't like anybody. And he came over. We get along great, by the way. He came over and he's like, I told my son that if the apocalypse happens, worst comes to worst. And he points to me and he's like, you're going to be the only, and everyone in this neighborhood, you're going to be the only one that survives. I said, you're goddamn right. You don't think I did that math the day they used the word outbreak? I'm looking around thinking, man, if this goes Resident Evil, if they turn into zombies, I'm gonna kill all these motherfuckers. They don't stand a chance. These guys, this is what happens. Like if you've never left America, if you don't know what a real you just turn into this like, oh my God, I don't have the right size Kit Kat. You're gonna be like, oh my, this is the end of the world. Like, oh God, come on, man. Come on. You got to have gratitude, right? You got to fill yourself up with that stuff, man. That would be my biggest, man. It has been an honor of my life, honestly, working with you and working with the kids and working with the people and really understanding what a real life can be. I've only seen it at a distance. I'm so lucky. I am so blessed and thankful, and I have nothing but gratitude for even just meeting you guys here, even meeting you lowlives right now. I'm not even just having the opportunity to be around people. It is honestly, it's shaped my life because I go back to that girl and that boy. Like that could have been me, and we want to be able. Being in America is not something that should make you proud, because you didn't do anything. Pride shouldn't even enter that equation. What the fuck did you do for it? You know what I mean? You just got lucky. You want 5% of the world's population right now. 5% of the total population on Earth is alive right now. Of the 110 billion people, you are the luckiest 5%. Of that 5%, who are the luckiest of those 5%? 5% America. Of that group, who are the luckiest? The people who are able-bodied and have, are able to change their lives and change their income. You are the luckiest of the luckiest of the lucky. Like, you know what I mean? We are all in this like tiny boat of the lucky. And, you have to really fill yourself up with those thoughts. Because if you don't, if you prime yourself, if you let yourself get these other thoughts in your mind, you're going to be just a walking dickhead, zombie, asshole, pussy, man. And you're just going to be one of these people that just doesn't, you never get anywhere. You're not going to make anything happen. It's just a disgusting way to be. It's one of the reasons why, I disappeared from the email she was talking about earlier. That I had sent out an email like 10, in some cases 15 years, because there's only a certain type of person that I'm willing to work with, that I want to be around. Someone who doesn't make me feel like anything is work, who I can never look at anything I'm doing right now and look at it like work. You know what I'm saying? And that is like, you've really got to fill yourself up with gratitude and get there. And when you're there, man, it's a magical place. You stay right at the edge of your capability. You're wanting to set new records every day. It's this magical place I like to call flow or zen, where quitting and winning are equally as unattractive. You just want to stay there in that zone, in that brilliant zone. You want to keep it going. And that's exactly when we can get kids there, no matter how bad they are, how off they seem, when they can get there and they get addicted to the wins, that's what gives you the dopamine hits. When we choose our addictions, you can set records and do anything, man. And this is the time right now where it's going to be valued more than anything else. It's brilliant. It's amazing. And I love you guys for doing this, and I appreciate you so much for having me.